welcome everybody to our coffee chat. I'm Fernanda Landgraf. I'm a senior analyst and project manager here at PCMI, and I'm the host of the coffee chat sessions. If you're new here, first of all, welcome. We host these sessions once a month, so people from the industry can have a space to share some thoughts, trends, questions. So feel very, very welcome. Before we started, I just want to have a couple of guidelines. Lau, if you can. Yeah, this one. We would love to have your cameras open. Also, we truly encourage participation, so feel free to open your mic, ask questions, make comments, or if you prefer, you can also use our chat. But please keep in mind that we do publish these materials on our YouTube channel, so just mind your comments as you would in any in-person event. All right? So for today's sessions, Lau, can you? Yeah, thanks. We have two guest speakers. César Garcia is the CEO of OneKey Payments, a Brazilian PSP, which integrates payment solutions from Brazil and also globally. And we also have Albert Morales, which is the general manager of Belvo, open finance, data and payments platform in Latin America. Thank you very much for joining us today. I will give you the stage so you can introduce yourself, introduce the company, and also present what's coming next in the Brazilian payments industry.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Fernanda and the team and your team for inviting us to have this session. So as you mentioned, I'm César Garcia. I'm working in the financial industry for over 16, maybe 17 years right now. So I used to be executive director from a foreign bank here in Brazil, and now I'm leading OneKey Payment as a payment institution, licensed payment institution here in Brazil. We have focus in the market since 2021. OneKey Payments is leading here as the main payment method for a specific industry, high risk industry, which is becoming regulated here in Brazil, which is the betting industry, the betting market.
Thanks, folks, for having me here. I'm Albert Morales. I'm a general manager at Belvo, and here at Belvo, we're the leading open finance payments and data platform. We have a partnership here with our friends at OneKey, and we are fully focused on the new functionalities of payments that we have in Brazil, which are built on top of the open finance rails. So in here, we work indirectly with the industry through OneKey with betting, but we also play a role in other industries like e-commerce, where we provide the latest solutions in payments on top of Pix here in Brazil. We're also operating in Mexico with similar solutions, and happy to shed some light on all the advancements that are been recently launched here in Brazil, which are very exciting, and also what's to come, because the roadmap in this country from the central bank doesn't start here. So maybe César, if you want, maybe we can bring some context on what's the next generation of payments in Brazil, and bringing a little bit of context on the situation. So maybe we can move to the next one. But everyone, I think worldwide, everyone knows what the word Pix means. I think it's one of the very, very few success cases of a government-led peer-to-peer payment solution, if not the most successful within or coupled with UPI, for example, in India. That has been working for several years. I don't think we're going to enter into details on how that success has been for the last couple of years. But again, as we said, like products never stop being built, being improved. When Pix was built, it was built on existing infrastructure that existed, and the platform or the mean that was used to facilitate the payments was an actual QR code. We have seen that working in China with people like Alipay, etc. But after all, especially for online purchases or whether it's a physical purchase, that's not the ideal world, right? We want to make the payment completely seamless. And this is the innovation that is coming right now. Right now, you had to make a payment, you had to scan a QR code, and within your bank app, this adds some friction to the payment. This adds some insecurities also on you having to open your bank account on a retail shop, etc. So that's an inconvenience. We don't know. Maybe that's the reason why offline payments haven't took off as much as online, for example, because people at home, they pay more securely. But now with the latest innovations, we are overcoming these challenges. So what are those challenges? Maybe we can move to the next one. I think it's important here, and I'm gonna ask César to focus more on the new regulation on bets, but just to highlight from the broader payment spectrum, I think what the main challenge, or what I was mentioning before, it's the friction and in making a payment. So today there's still a lot of payments that are not being compensated. When I mean payments, it's purely Pix, and with these new innovations, we're making sure the whole payment system in Brazil is extremely efficient. So every single payment request ends up being a payment that it's liquidated. So we get closer to the ideal world of having 100% conversion rate on payments. But maybe César, if you could complement on that specific challenges for the iGaming industry, I think would be great to share here with the audience.
Yeah, yes, as you mentioned, Pix is being very adopted since I think something that helped the adoption of Pix, it was the need that was created during the pandemic from COVID, because people was changing the behavior for a more digital way, a more digital mindset, asking foods, purchasing online. So Pix, since the beginning, ramped up very fast, and now, as you mentioned, is the main payment method in Brazil, surpassing credit and debit card, as we have seen here in Brazil. So, but Pix also for online purchase has some. It's not obstacles, but it's something that creates friction, as you mentioned. For example, a typical journey for Pix, for a client that wants to use Pix in an e-commerce, for example, the client must go through several steps, basically. When you decide to do and proceed to checkout, you have to leave the e-commerce, the cart, go to your mobile, to your bank, or either you can scan the QR code that is put in the screen, or you can use the typical and most common solution from online purchase, which is what we call here in Brazil, copy and paste. Basically, is a way that you copy the whole hash of the payment, paste in your bank, in your account, and then you execute the payment. So all this process, by the end of the day, despite the Brazilians are really used to do, can leave you to abandon the card, and also can bring some drop in the success rate of the conversion, and some other frictions in the middle of the process. So the idea here that we discussed together with Belvo as the relevant partner in Open Finance is how to simplify the experience and enhance the user experience of our clients and their clients as well. Because we want to, as a payment provider, remove from the payment journey any concern that you may have, because we are there. The proposition of our business is to provide a seamless and a more friction experience for a purchase being made, right? So Open Finance is bringing us, and to your clients is providing more facility to execute the payment. Okay, so if you can move for the next slide. Here we bring some data. This is official data from Central Bank. It was reported this year. Is about the security on payments and fraud as well, using Pix as payment method. So we see a huge increase in requests of refund. This refund specifically in Brazil for Pix has a official name, which is MED. It's a mechanism of dispute. Basically, it's pretty similar to the same mechanism of dispute of credit card, but this is basically you go against the bank, open the dispute against the bank, and if the bank see as success your request, the bank may refund the payment. But this can bring a lot of uncertainty, because as a payment method and instant payment method, Pix, people is all the time moving the money from an account to another very fast, as you can imagine. So even when you get succeed on some requests, the bank cannot find the money anymore, because you already moved, or the fraudster already removed the money from the payment method. So what we discuss here is how to create a more secure environment using the benefits of open finance to our clients. For example, something that we see for overall all these years is a typical behavior of the customers from the betting industries, for example, which we call auto fraud, for example. It's people that using their are making the payments, but they regret because they lose money, or for some reason they want to cancel the payment, right? So people comes to very often to us and say, "Oh, it was not me that made the payment. It was my son, my wife." They blame other people's. So using the security of open finance, which could be compared as a 3DS for credit cards, to make more trust on the payment, you create a step when the payment is always are only allowed and complete using your biometry. So which means that, for example, for the chance to get more success in a request is much lower. Why? Because we can secure that payment was completed using your credentials, your biometry, or fingerprint or Face ID. So this brings to the whole ecosystem, not only for the gambling industry, but also for e-commerce as well, more trust on the payments.
Yeah, if I can complement here, César, because that's a very relevant point, and especially for people which is not familiar with how Pix works. Like traditional Pix, like this QR code that César was mentioning, or this hash, this Pix Coca-Cola, that effectively can be paid by anyone. Like there's no restriction that the payee needs to be the same person that owns the account at that e-commerce. And that's one of it's not the only one, because there is fraud also on the acquiring side. But at least on the payer side, there's a lot of accounts that are hijacked by fraudsters, right? So, and then they use your account to buy goods at Amazon, and they deliver it to their house. And this is a big problem, right? And with this new technology available right now, especially on biometric Pix, we can cut immediately that, right? So we can guarantee that César, which is the owner of that Amazon account, is the actual person that it's making the payment. Like no third-party accounts can make a payment on César's account at Amazon, right? And this will cut a lot of fraud cases in many industries. I mean, that's one of the main ones in iGaming, but that also affects e-commerce, for example, and that's a headache for all these retailers because there is constantly fraud cases on purchasing using someone else's accounts, right? So thanks to that technology, we just kill immediately all these cases, which is great for even for the whole ecosystem, right? Like retailers have less losses, they don't need to increase prices to end consumers, so literally everyone benefits from having a more secure payment system.
I have a question. This sounds really good. You're basically bringing authentication into the equation. If someone gets your Pix ID, can they not just use it elsewhere? Or are you able to put like a lock on your ID so that it can only be used through an authenticated method like yours?
Yeah, the magic of that technology, how it's being involved, is we even have a third layer of security, right? So first, we need your biometry, whether it's face or your fingerprint. That's one of the requirements. I mean, it uses FIDO protocol, which is quite standard. And second, that consent to make a payment, it's linked to your device. So whether your account is being even hijacked, they won't be in possession of your device. So they won't be able to make the payment, the actual payment, regardless of whether they fake your face, because we know right now with available technology, you can even fake a face, or you can even fake a fingerprint. That happens. So even in the most sophisticated fraud cases where someone can reproduce to be unique, they can still need your phone. They still need your phone to be in possession of them. And we also capture other signals from the device in order to allow the payment. So it's really, there's multiple layers of security. So in order that payment to be approved, you need the device, you need your face, or you need your fingerprint. So we need to verify that it's you. And we also need the same conditions as where you were making payments before. So we analyze, there's some risk signals we get from the device, right? The bright screen, whether it's I mean, any conditions, even the location, which that will end up into a fraud check, and that payment won't go through. So it's extremely, extremely secure. We're going to guarantee 100% security, but for sure, it's 100 times more secure on the current Pix payment. So maybe César, if we can comment on probably on the effect on the conversion, which is also as important as fraud. Like in the next slide.
Yes, exactly. If you can move slide. So as you mentioned, the biggest problem that we want to address here is how to solve the impact of low conversion rates due to fraud, due to abandon of cards, because the experience online, you don't have to. Whoever is a retail, when you have the face-to-face with your client, you can make connection, right? So you can use your expertise to convince to sell what you want to sell, if there are a service or a goods, because you have the client in front of you. When you don't have the client in front of you, it's more difficult because it's a cold relationship, right? You don't have that interaction, even if you are using chatbot, but you don't have that instant connection with your client. So it's important to bring more experience to make conversions. So if you consider, for example, if you advance one more slide, here I'm bringing the use case of the gaming industry, because it's something that it really happened this year. So it's something very fresh, okay? Comparing to the old version, when the client don't need to do anything, any kind of validation, it's just to complete the payments and it's done. When the new regulation coming in force this year in January 25, what we experience from the payment data is that the client, our client, was experiencing a huge drop in the conversion rate. Why? Because the payment not only can be only made right now by the user, but also there is an obligation from the customers to make the registration of the bank account in the website or the platform of our client. Okay, so considering this as your client goes to Amazon, whatever the marketplace, before the client make the payment, he must do a manual registration. So by the end of the day, what happened is that we face a lot of errors of typo. Why? Because you have a small device, so the client is going to do the registration, he digits some data wrong, and you cannot complete the payment. By using the Open Finance technology as a KYC tool, you can avoid all this burden of registration and optimize your conversion, because once the client assigns the consentment for the device, which means I want to make the enrollment of my bank account or in a wallet, for example, it can be Samsung Pay, Google Pay here in Brazil. But when I do this consentment, the Open Finance, the tool that we use that with Belvo, goes through the bank account device of the user and pull out of all the data, which means that all the data that you need for the registration are there, which is bank account, agent, your name, your CPF. Also, you have some extra security tools, for example, which is a limitation of the payment that can be completed using the mechanism, a deadline for that consentment to be valid, which is 5 years. So there's a lot of enhancements by using Open Finance that can eliminate all these frictions and encourage your clients to keep purchasing. You know, the retention for you by the end of the day is better because you provide a better use experience for your clients, for the users.
César, just a quick question here. How do you calculate the conversion rate? Is all the QR code or the hash generated by the ones that were paid? Is that it?
Yes, it's basically all the hash that was created by the payment, by the payer, when he choose the checkout, and the payment that is completed. So there is a huge gap that drops the conversion rate by the end of the day. And
okay, so that's by transaction, not by volume. It's by
yes,
transaction.
by transaction. Yeah. Yes, it's by transactions, because for specifically for the gaming industry, as a payment processor, I cannot complete a payment without match the bank account details that was provided by the client. This is a standard. Is using Pix. Okay, so using Open Finance, I will avoid this burden because I will receive bank details, bank validation that it was already checked before. Hi, Gary.
Yes, I had a question there. Yeah, because very interesting point of view. I have confusion with the term open banking point of view. Sorry for that, because you talk about when they go to your computer, they have the mobile device. You need to set up some keyword, key. In order to validate, you want to take the information for the smartphones to validate all the biometrics for the smartphone, models, location, all the details, and then connect that with the bank account for the customer. That's correct. And then you create the signature sensor left because the keyword, something like that. Can you explain a little bit more detail? Because The payment of open banking and the process are a little bit confused with the signature on the digital signature of the device.
Maybe I can take that one. It might be a bit confusing from people outside of Brazil. So basically, when we say Pix, we have the actual rates, right? The RTP system, which is provided. The technology of Pix is provided 100% by the payments Brazilian payment system. Like it's central bank who built the technology, and this is provided, right? So the rail is Pix. What open finance comes into play, open banking, but in Brazil it was renamed to open finance, so now we don't have open banking anymore. It's basically an extra layer on top of that rail where we build additional capabilities. So for example, when we say that we are now able to make a Pix using your biometrics and your device information, all this logic, it's built on the layer on top of the Pix, which is provided by the open finance rail. So imagine us two layers, right? We have the core, which is Pix, and the only let's say responsibility of Pix it's to be a completely performance system and guarantee that we can compensate and liquidate the billions and trillions of transactions happening in the system. That's the only responsibility of Pix. Everything that has been built on a second layer, which is the open finance layer, right? So you cannot make that payment with biometrics directly on Pix. Right now we are discussing the evolution of Pix on, for example, installments. That would be built, or direct debit, for example, of Pix, that would be built on the Pix rail. And open finance will be just a channel to, let's call it API, this functionality, or make an APIization. I'm sure that word exists, of making an APIization of this functionality to have a common standard, right? So this is where the role of open finance comes into play. And maybe if we can already take your question, Gary, and I think it's in the next slide, we're going to cover that. On the future of payments, maybe we can move to the next one. This is where open finance plays a key role here in Brazil and in the payments ecosystem, right? Pix so far has been a success. It initially started to take the market share out of the petty cash transaction or peer-to-peer transactions, where there was no other payment method besides regular transfers that no one was using because no one remembers your account number by heart, and people were using cash instead. And little by little, Pix was evolving, right? And they were moving to peer-to-merchant transactions, business to business, etc. But when we look at what is the main Pix competitor, we look at the cards payments, there is still some gaps in utilization, right? And where Pix cannot have the exact same experience you can have on the cards system. And this is when open finance comes as a leverage to Pix in order to have a playing field of competition between the card payment and the actual Pix payment. How do we tackle that? I think open finance brings a very similar experience as a tokenization of the cards, right? So you don't even need to remember, you don't even need to go to your bank account in order to make a payment. You just enroll your bank account as you were tokenizing your card, and then you just make an Apple Pay or Google Pay type of payment. When we bring that experience online, then we have a competition head-to-head between Pix and cards. And in the offline world, what's happening practically the same, was even worse, right? For the fact that I was mentioning before, that if you want to make a Pix transaction in the supermarket, you need to open up the bank account. You need to log in onto your bank app in the queue of the supermarket. That is extremely insecure. And a lot of people is completely afraid of doing that. Versus you have your card tokenized on your phone, and there's not even sensitive information. Like you just, put your phone, tap on the POS, and you are clear to go. With that open finance layer now, we can do that, right? So you can tokenize your bank account, and you can use the NFC. Right now, it's only available to Android devices via Google Pay. You can now tokenize your bank account, so you can make a Pix using the NFC of your device and together with the NFC of the POS, right? So now the experience of making a Pix offline is exactly the same as making a tap on phone using Google Pay or Apple Pay with your tokenized card, right? So now the competition, it's really head-to-head. And this is why the industry now in the market is okay, Pix has grown a lot, but on low value payments, etc. Now it's a moment of truth, right? So from now onwards, we're going to see if Pix because the main benefit of Pix is actually cost. It's a very, very most cost-effective payment method, right? So here in Brazil, and I encourage you, if you are in other countries, I see in the UK, there's still like some challenges on the open banking payments. How to encourage customers to adopt Pix if we keep saying that the Pix or these local payment mechanisms like, I don't know, FedNow in the US, it's way more efficient than the card networks. This like economic benefit should be transmitted to the consumer. How merchants do it here in Brazil, whether online or offline, you pay with Pix and you can get steep discounts. Like you can get even like up to 15% discount on a purchase if you pay with Pix. Why? Because there's not only the cost of the actual payment, which in the card schemes you have those of intermediaries in the middle that take a cut, versus in Pix you go directly to the rail, but also the compensation of that payment, the merchant on Pix receives the money up front. They don't need to discount all these card receivables, which then that takes huge APR, especially in Brazil. You want to anticipate a card receivable because someone has paid a purchase by installments. And here in Brazil, you pay it up to 15, 16% monthly payment rate, not APR, MPR, which is huge. So this cost at the end gets transmitted to the consumers, right? So thanks now to this technology, thanks to Open Finance, now I think we're going to see a plain level field, and we're going to see the evolution of these peer-to-peer or account-to-account payment solutions. Not sure if I answered your question, Gary.
Yeah,
so you have your hand raised.
Very well. Let's put the context. Yes, I know Pix. I was in Brazil in February, January to see the launch of the point of view, the tokens of the point of sales. Okay, that's very interesting point of view. But my concern was, you respond very well. The situation was about the two legs connection to make the biometric situation, tokenization of the card, tokenization of Pix through the open banking or banking financial solution. That say you're going to have your magic, let me see that way, but Belvo enable that process to the point of sale to enable through third parties to enable this process and enable that the connectivity through this connection with a machine or tokenization to e-commerce with the open financial through your solution. That's correct?
Yeah, so now we switch the equation versus the payment, versus the card payments where all the initiation is on the acquiring side, right? Here, on the payment via Open Finance, the let's call it the issuing side, whether we're not issuing anything, but on the issuing side, we have the control of the payment, right? So in upfront what is going to be the payment before you actually start the payment, and you can initiate the payment from the issuing side. You can also request that payment from the acquiring side, right? I think in the following slide we have a video of how that experience works. So I think would be better. So those are the screens. On the left side, this is already an account, like let's call it a checkout, that there's some accounts already which have been linked to this, whatever checkout it is, could be any merchant behind it. On the right side, you see the actual payment experience right now, right? So without leaving the checkout, which what César was mentioning here, you can see, for example, Caixa account linked already to the checkout. And we just prompt the native biometric on the device, whether in that case it's Face ID on an iPhone. We just make the payment right away, just with like an Apple Pay-like experience, but just leveraging Pix on top of it. But I think, Gary, I mean, if we move to the next slide where we have the video, you will be able to see how that enrollment process happens on the payer side, right? And this is mandatory for like everyone. Like this is like when you set up a card on the e-commerce, right? This is the only friction we have in the process, right? Linking your account, but everything happens automatically, basically. So you select the institution you want to link, you automatically get redirected to the bank, you confirm that linkage, and then you get back to the e-commerce. I mean, there's some friction. It happens only once. That consent can be for several years, so you don't need to renew that consent on a given time period, like let's call it a yearly basis. If the merchant is of your trust and you want to have that consent active for years, you can do it. So you've seen the experience, I mean, fairly simple. We are seeing very adoption and bringing like fresh data, because this is a fairly new solution that has been released beginning of March. So we have been 1 month live. We have been doing tests. We are several players in the market enabling a very few payment initiation service providers like Belvo. We are providing the solution, but we have fresh data. Even Google, for example, in Brazil, they're a regulated institution, so they're offering that solution to any Google wallet user from Android. And we are seeing a massive adoption. Just in the last couple of weeks, more than 500,000 Brazilians already set up one or several accounts within Google Pay and start to perform payments using this new experience. So what we expect, it's maybe not in the super short term because there's still a learning curve. Maybe not all segments of the population will, jump into this new payment methodology in the shorter term. But we will see a faster adoption, and probably in the following years, this will be the new norm. So maybe that thing of the QR code. Maybe if we reconvene here, we have another chat probably 2 years down the line. Maybe the usage of QR codes it's really, really reminiscent because this is going to be the new norm of making payments in a more secure way.
It's important also, taking from the point of Albert was mentioned, so you say, oh, okay, this might be common to pay using Google Pay or Samsung Pay, and say, what about Apple, for example? Here in Brazil, there is a typical characteristic of our people is that we are very savvy for technology. Okay, and Pix is a good use case of this. And when it comes from Samsung Pay or Google Wallet, over 90% of the cell phones in Brazil use Android as the system. Apple represents less than 10%, or it's around 10%. So, and even though we have this agenda being pushed by the central bank, as we mentioned before, because the open finance agenda and all the innovation that it was backed by the central bank here in Brazil was with the scope to provide to the customer, to the end customer in Brazil, a low cost for complete payments, okay? Because we came from non-bancarization people, which before the pandemic there is a number, a magic number. It's around over 50 million people didn't have bank account. Now this number is changing very fast since the pandemic, since the uses of Pix, because Pix, for use Pix, you have to be bancarized, right? So if you extract some data from central bank, for example, we can see from 2021 to 2024, for example, that Pix has become the main payment method for purchase here in Brazil, representing over 67% of the payment method. This is official data from central bank that it was released this year. Credit card and debit card, you also can see a very small increase, but represents around 50% of the payments method or less in terms of debit card. So using open finance and all this facility, I'm sure that people will be more used to use this digital payment, because everyone is going and moving for this direction here in Brazil right now. So I think when you talk about the experts, they said, oh, maybe we create a super app like you go to China. For example, I went to Shanghai in 2019 for 10 days of innovation. Okay, course. So what I see in 2019 in China was amazing. And I have colleagues from US and colleagues from UK, and the guys was really impressed. I said, I have never imagined that is so good, the experience of payments. Basically, they use WeChat for everything. They have the bank accounts, they have everything there. So wherever you go in China, you basically pay, scan your code or your face, or digital or your face. So you go to the metro, it's just to put your face, and that device, it's already connected through your bank account, because everybody uses WeChat. So you go through the underground, whatever you want to do purchase, you can do using your face. So we are moving toward that direction. If I being very optimistic as I am, I think in a very short term, Brazil would be leading this innovation in the financial sector.
I think that's a very nice point, because what we are seeing in the past few years is that we are like Pix is a success, but we are from time to time adding new use cases. For example, at the pandemic, we start like replacing cash, or because people had to be more digitalized, we increased bancarization. But then, as you mentioned, now we still had, although Pix is very successful, we still had some gaps in the experience, some frictions of paying online. Sometimes, as Albert mentioned, like people don't feel safe opening their bank account in a retail store or supermarket. So we still had some gaps, and also with the return mechanism from the central bank not being very efficient, people still relied a lot on card for high value transactions. But now what we are seeing is like we are leveling the play field, and we are going to compete even more with cards. So what we can see is a very clear evolution of how Pix is adding this use case and become even more popular.
Yeah, if you consider this slide, which is also official report from central bank, as I showed before, a typical conversion, for example, for a mass payment, which is the gambling industry. So in Pix, for example, of matchings, we have here over. Sorry, I'm having feedback. I don't know where. We experience sometimes high peak in the transactions, around maybe 5,000 transactions per minute, which is massive compared to an e-commerce, compared to other type of market. And that conversion rate, which is around 89, 91%, comes to 99%, which means the conversion rate, because by removing the friction and not letting your client go, or at least give them time to decide if he's completing the payment or not, or you don't need to rely on the technology, because sometimes you got dropped, you got down. You complete payments more faster, and the success rate is very good.
Yeah, César was mentioning, imagine the impact. Sorry, imagine the impact on the retail industry, right? Like imagine the effect that had the implementation of 3DS, for example, in Europe with e-commerce. Like that's terrible. So Pix, the Pix 1.0 by default was like that, right? So imagine removing this barrier. Direct impact even in the retail industry, right? So all these purchases, like the demand is in the gaming, probably it's more inelastic, but on purchasing goods, especially high value goods, like the people has a time window of even up to, some merchants offer up to 12 hours to compensate the Pix, even 24 hours. You have 24 hours to make the payment. Imagine the abandon, like, so even conversions on e-commerce, for example, are way lower than even in the gaming industry. So we have some even e-commerce that conversion on Pix it's up to 60%, right? So there's 40% potential purchases that get dropped just because of, like that time that we give to consumers to think twice or three times if they really need this product or not, right? So this is a problem that the cards don't have, right? Once you have your card on file, the purchase is immediate, right? So again, putting the same playing level field for all the payment mechanisms, and this is also what the central bank wants.
Is there really two sides of the same coin?
Yeah, Albert, I think I have a question. It might be better for you. I think once you, as a user, once you give the consent, you go through the consentment process. Is it valid only for that specific merchant, or as a provider, is that valid for any other provider that Belvo, for example, orchestrates the initiation?
The consent is given to the actual payment service initiator, right? So in that case, it's Belvo. So for example, when you also give a consent to Google, that consents to Google, you can use this consent from Google to pay at any merchant that they might have a partnership with Google Pay, right? So this is also great because users won't necessarily need to be creating one consent per every merchant that they want to buy. Like, this is great, right? So otherwise, the friction would be terrible. If for every even small merchant that you just want to buy once, you need to give them consent just to make one single payment.
But would you guys have a B2C strategy in that sense of like communicating to users that once they give the consent to Belvo, they can use that throughout different providers?
Yeah, so as a regulated institution, we are like explicitly in the journey, but we're embedded as part of the merchant journey, right? So there's even some merchants before that they have their own payment mechanism. So when you buy on merchant A that uses, let's say, Shopify, I just have my card on file on Shopify for merchant A, but if I go to another merchant B that uses Shopify, my card is already there because there is a payment orchestrator that uses that. So this is an example with OneKey, right? So OneKey is a payment system operator here, and they operate with several iGaming platforms, right? So we can leverage this footprint. So whomever it's playing on, merchant A or operator A, and you register your account, then you go and you want to bet on operator B, your consent is already active. So this is good.
Very good.
I think we practically cover everything. If we can leave, I'm not sure if there is some more extra questions. I think we're running out of time. But yeah, I think we covered the rest of the presentation. And if anyone else have any questions now that want to be answered, otherwise we can also connect offline, as some of you mentioned, and happy to answer any doubt.
Yeah, I think our LinkedIn is there on LinkedIn of PCMI. We are more than welcome to receive any questions that you may have. You can reach us.
Perfect.
Very good. Yeah, very good. I just wanted to thank you both. I think that was a very interesting point of view and discussion.
Likewise, having good attendees with good questions.
Yeah,
Congratulations
for the opportunity in this space.
Parabéns, cara, equipo. Muito bom pela apresentação e da solução. Parabéns pela gente.
Obrigado.
Obrigado,
guys, just before you all go, I just have one quick announcement before we close the session. CrossTech is a partner of PCMI, and they will be hosting an event next month in New York. So Lau, you can go to the next slide. We have a 20% discount code. If you want to participate, you can use our code. You can just like take a screenshot or a picture of the code. And yeah, I would like to thank you, César and Albert, for the session. It was really, really good. And I hope to see you all next month in our next session.